Hi, Amedeo Beretta here, and this time around we're looking at an evolution of the body mechanics shot that we have seen earlier on this channel. So the student is having a little bit of a problem trying to make the character rotate around the neck. So let's have a look and see what happens in here. The character is preparing for the jump and then is rotating around its own torso and jumping on. And there's a moment here in the reference where the character is rotating around its own neck. Well, the live action character is doing that, because the 3D character doesn't quite do that. Not yet anyway, at least. The easy way to troubleshoot this problem is first of all to parent a red sphere at the base of the neck. You see that when the base of the neck should stay stable, so here it should rotate around its own axis, it all of a sudden sways sideways and then stays there and rotate around its axis. So it's actually rotating quite okay around its axis here, but it just has this jump between around 175 and 177. That's kind of a bummer there. If we look at the conformation of the controls, we realize that there is a master control. Let me just deselect the geometry. There is a master control that moves the geometry around, and there is a sub-master control that moves the center of gravity around. However, those are not aligned. So now whenever the master control spins around its own axis here, now you have this kind of behavior. That's the original scene of animating, having to counter animate two controllers that are moving the character around as masters can only generate a lot of arcs that are now difficult to control, because their solving depends on controlling 3 sets of curves per control. I wouldn't want to find myself in this situation. So we have to find a way to solve this issue. How do we control the character so that we can finally rotate it around its torso without going nuts in the process? With 2 controls to counter animate plus a possible chest control that moves the chest up and down, we're going to experience some severe problems when we try to solve this problem. With 2 controllers acting as a root of the character and counter animating the character, plus a third one that rotates the chest around, also offsetting the neck, well, it becomes fairly difficult, I think, to control this animation, because now that's 3 sets of rotation curves that are counter animating one another. That's really difficult to maintain as a piece of animation. So I think my priority in here would be to zero out some of the controllers so that we can maybe keep them aligned to the master. I think as a first thing, I would probably want to zero out these center of gravity control so that maybe I can put the center of gravity a bit more centered around the body, and I can maybe use it to spin the body around. Let's see if that's even a possibility. Now I would like to find the offending area of the animation, which is here. This is the fatal, you see, spinning. That doesn't quite work. I'm thinking maybe I could fix it with layers now that I look at it again. It seems to me we are simply oriented in a strange way. I mean, look at that. The master is pointing straight, and then the sub-control in here is spinning around this axis this way. There is really no way we can make this work. Not without bloodshed, I think. So let's see if there is a better way. So I think the problem really is in this area when we lose the alignment between the 2 controls. It feels as if the animator was keeping the 2 things aligned to control the animation, and then they suddenly forgot, and now we find ourselves in a double spin of 2 controls losing alignment. So that's probably the area that needs love. Maybe you can try to fix it just by removing that sudden swerve in the rotation. So I've identified the position in which the animation starts to offset between 172, 176. You see that if you track the red sphere, it goes nuts. If I look at the reference, there is a certain amount of rotation there, but the problem is that it happens while the body spins around the neck. You see that the character is spinning around the neck between 173 and 176. I think I can maybe put the center of gravity controller over a layer, and I can maybe prevent the rotation from happening altogether, the swerve, so that you see we start to swing around the center of the body, which seems to be, if I look at the reference, seems to be quite what we want to have. I think that the actual character is rotating a lot more, or a little bit more at least, so I'm going to rotate it a bit more. There you go. And then we have a lot of a spin there, which I'm going to, I don't know if I need that key, let's see. And then 176, I'm probably going to zero out to see where the character should have been. And I think the character should really have been a bit more like this. And if I look at the reference, you see that the reference rotates around the torso. Let's see what the reference is doing. So the reference is pushing back, and then it keeps pushing back a little bit. So maybe I can already push back a little bit from 172 to 174. I'm probably going to zero out the center of gravity to begin with to see what's going on in there. You see that just by zeroing it out, I am now rotating around the neck like I wanted. So the problem was actually the offset between the two controllers, the rotation change, which felt unmotivated. It would be something rather that if you want to swing this way or that way, I think you would rather do it with the master control instead of using this additional control in here, because now it would make it difficult to understand which control does what in fact. So now between 172 and 176, I have a continuous rotation, which is mostly around the head, the neck, and then we fall down. And between 176 and 178, let's see what I think this controller in here may be in need of some love. So I'm going to put it on the layer as well. And I'm going to check what happens in the reference. So in the reference, the character is simply swinging, rotating around its center of gravity. It's not even raising as much as the 3D. It's just rotating around its center of gravity, which my character is doing. And then between 176 and 178, you see that the neck stays there in the middle, in the air. To begin with, I probably want to retain the orientation of the master there, and then just spin around the center of gravity as a test. To do that, I can store the position of the center of gravity on my shelf, and then at 178 I'm going to recall it. So I want to store both translation and rotation here at 176, and then I store the position, and then on 178 I recall the position. There you go. And now the character isn't translating anymore, and I can fix the position, and you see that it stays there really. So maybe they can go a little bit higher just not to kill the momentum there, and then a little bit further so that it keeps moving. But the real action happens here on this controller, which now again starts rotating wildly, I think. And let's have a look. I expect this will be only a twist. So the kid is facing down, 3/4 down towards camera. In the next frame, is done with the body almost 90-degree rotation. So I can just rotate the controller in there, and that should give me a perfect rotation around the neck. So now I should have a perfect rotation around the neck throughout, and then I need to start falling down. So this is a bit tricky, I suppose. I think I want to go back to a pose I know, maybe this one at 185, the landing. So I'm going to grab both controllers on the layer, set a key at 185, zero it out to see what the pose is. And I have to disagree with the spine in here. It feels like the spine is broken, while this feels a lot more continuous as a curve. So in here, I'm not going to fix it because we are trying to fix the rotation around the neck. But in practice, if I were the animator, I would really want to fix this line of action because it doesn't feel believable. It feels a lot like something that needs attention. So now in here, I want to check the rotation. And one thing that tends to happen in there is that the reference, this is the neck. You see that the neck goes down, but it doesn't really goes down nearly as much as this controller does. So let's see if maybe I can keep the controller up. There you go. That could be maybe my solution. I don't want to really use the controller to spin. Remember, I want to use the center of gravity to spin this guy, because this guy is going to spin in an easy way on a single axis. So it's going to be very easy to control. And again, I don't want to rotate the center of gravity in any other direction. The center of gravity is just there to spin the character in this setup. It's not there to do anything else. I'm checking the orientation of the character, and it seems to me that this is when the feet are moving towards camera left. So I imagine that what's going on in here is that the character is rotating a lot more. And I could maybe spin it with this control, and I expect that the character will be not going down nearly as much. There you go, maybe this way. From the top view, I mean, without having references, I would expect that we keep more or less the same orientation, but it feels to me like we're going down quite a lot. So I'm going to keep the center of gravity up, and then we are going down, and then we spin down there. And when I look at the plate blast, I can tell that now we are rotating indeed around the neck, which was the problem we intended to solve originally. You see that now it's happily spinning around it. I think the animator should have a closer look at the internal body mechanics of this shot, mostly because it feels that at times the spine is broken a little bit, and it seems to me that in this shot the chest is actually rotating in the reference a bit more towards the floor, while this character is all bent in there and still looking behind in a way that is in front of the character right now. So I think there are some issues in general with the internal positioning of the limbs of the torso and externally with the arcs of the character. I hope this was useful, and I'm looking forward to see the next iteration of this animation. I think it's really time to make sure that the rotation are working more or less, and to put down some poses for the limbs, at least the contact poses, the kickoff poses, just to gain more insights about the dynamics and anatomy of the character. Have fun!
My massage, very good for blood circulation, heart problem, hormone problem.